In Aneurism IV, there are many fate/roles that you can choose from to better roleplay Blade Runner if it happened to take place in the 1940s, though everyone must always begin as a lowly Prole.
For the path I walk, the ideals I strive to achieve, they call me homeless.
Your job as a Prole is to do unskilled labor and be oppressed by everyone, including other Proles, until you have enough amnesites to get another job. This work includes making metal bars, doing laundry, fishing, and the limited time job that makes more amnesites and money than other fates, building nukes. Most other fates at a default are stronger than you, with Zealots in particular being your natural predators hunting you for your meat.
No, please!
Though most other fates also don't want to risk losing several amnesites for killing you, and due to this, Prole's biggest threat is usually other Proles, as even Cortex won't just randomly gun you down, and will instead bait you into hitting them so they can commit insurance fraud. The Corpsman, or Doctor in Aneurism IV, is one of the first fates you will upgrade from a Prole, and the first and most important part about a Corpsman is not the fact that they passively regenerate health, but the fact that they passively regenerate health no matter what. This means you can ignore literally every damage status in the game, including starving, thirst, bleeding, and worms, and still be completely fine.
Joe, you have blood just pouring out of your pant leg.
Yeah, I had a ball blow in the river.
And since you are basically walking anti-entropy, your job revolves around that, giving your own blood to others in exchange for amnesites. Your blood also refuels the auto-stitchers. Furthermore, as a doctor, you can also make parcels in order to refuel Obamacare vending machines, though you'll likely need to go dumpster diving to make them. Lastly, it's important to note that even though you regenerate health, you are only slightly better in combat than a Prole, and you can just as easily get drilled with a pistol within seconds. There are many fates to choose from in Aneurism IV, and the dealer in my opinion is one of the worst of the fates. Costing 3 amnesites, you will have access to the dealer net, where you can purchase various items that are either hard to come by, or completely unavailable to other roles.
I'll bet they won't have... Wow, they have it!
Whacky slime.
You then have to retrieve these items and are rewarded amnesite credits for doing so, which you can then extort to other players. So, why are they so bad? Because they require prerequisite money in order to function, and usually don't turn a significant profit at all. People also know you are carrying money because of this, so you may consistently become the victim of a "it's not my fault, the government made me do it."
Monkeys!
Combine all this with the facts that you don't have any default damage or health buffs, and that you can't build warheads at wartime, you are essentially paying 3 amnesites to shop and to be a weaker version of the Prole. However, the one caveat of the dealer is you have to be one in order to be a banker, a far more competent role at making money. Of all the neutral fates in Aneurism IV, the Liquidator is the most competent and well-off all around. Costing 6 amnesites, as a Liquidator you are faced with a variety of tasks, including repairing literally anything that can be broken and burning bodies and rot growths, all making you question whether or not your engineering degree was worth it. Furthermore, you are also capable of working on nukes in wartime, making you one of the most ideal roles for making amnesites in the game. However, what makes them better off than other neutral roles is that they spawn with a flamethrower.
Rifleman? Flamethrower!
The flamethrower is not only a pretty good weapon, but it also has unlimited ammo, meaning even when Scum attack, you will always have a chance at defending yourself. Even more so, the Liquidator is the prerequisite to the Cortex faction's Sanitar, a role that has the roles of both a controller and Liquidator. However, the Liquidator's role does come with the problem that since their whole gimmick is basically undoing the damage that the Scum does, you are more likely to be targeted by them than any other neutral role.
Today's subject is slavery.
Most people are surprised at the lack of RDM in Aneurism IV, and that's because if you do, you will end up as a slave. For committing the heinous crime of defending yourself from that one Prole who keeps stealing your laundry, has granted you negative amnesites and thus forces you to respond as a slave as long as you are negative. He deserved it. From this point, you are essentially forced to push boulders into a smelter until you earn enough amnesites to no longer be in the negative. From there, you can then die and become a Prole again. A slave is universally seen as a punishment, but there are 2 reasons why you might become one on purpose. One, if there are no other jobs at the moment for Proles and laundry's crowded, pushing boulders for 40% isn't a terrible way to make amnesites, and there isn't exactly anything stopping you from staying there after you go positive either. Reason 2, you are looking to take the serum that lets you become a raid boss mukbang YouTuber.
My metamorphosis begins.
Oh God, my flesh is
The form they promised me is great, but my transition shall be agonizing.
Of all the neutral fates in Aneurism IV, the Banker, a 6 amnesite upgrade from a dealer, which will cost 9 amnesites in total, despite being the most expensive out of all neutral roles, is ironically the most simple, and that is by serving as a living ATM and standing by pay terminals every time there is a pay cycle.
Good morning! morning, everyone. Would you be so kind as to give me all your money? Certainly, sir.
From here, you can charge a fee percentage for both people withdrawing and depositing money, allowing you to make large amounts of cash for yourself and potentially yoink the server out of huge amounts of money.
He's not robbing us. We're the bank. It's our job to rob him.
Bankers will often be murdered for the same reason dealers will, and also just because people don't like you. However, a majority of players also value you safekeeping their money even with high fees. And since your main vector of making money is through self-adjustable interest rates, the biggest threat to bankers, much like proles, is ironically other bankers. Lastly, bankers are a direct upgrade to dealers as they also have access to the dealer net, so the end game for any dealer is really just to become a banker. In Aneurism IV, the most elusive, hard to obtain, and powerful fate in the entire game is that of the fire-hot, puke-spewing vomit coffin.
Oh, that's the f***ing dragon!
Towering over every other fate, having 2,000 health and replacing a long run with a brief sprint, the vomit coffin is a being of indiscriminate destruction, with the main goal of going around and vomiting on anything and everything that doesn't immediately drop to their knees and worship you. In order to become a vomit coffin, you must first become a slave by going negative in amnesites, and after redeeming yourself, consuming the festering serum, which can only be made by a malpractitioner. Like the slave it evolves from, it has no allegiances to anyone, and has no punishments for murder and vice versa. Though there is usually an implication that the vomit coffin will work with Scum, as a sort of creature of the end times rotting the server to death. Also, keep in mind, as a vomit coffin, you can take a ridiculous amount of damage. However, your vomit is extremely short range and people can easily run from you, along with the fact that you can't interact with anything including eating, drinking, or even opening and closing doors. The cult is one of two main factions fighting for control of Aneurism IV, and the Scumbag is the first and weakest of its four fates. For 3 amnesites, you are now tagged for limitation permanently. However, you also don't get punished for anything either, and actually gain amnesites when you vandalize stuff or murder people. Being cult, you can drink blood and eat organs without consequence, and you also have access to the cult workbench, allowing you to build powerful weapons. The lung puncher and tantalizer are ideal, but any automatic weapon should work otherwise. You make these weapons via resources you find underground in cult stashes. They even have a coal mine and smelter. However, machine trinkets are really hard to come by underground, and since they're used in every single weapon, I recommend storing machine trinkets in your locker before joining the cult. Lastly, keep in mind that as a scumbag, you are the weakest link, and although you are capable of doing a lot of damage, especially in numbers, you should strive to become a zealot as fast as possible, as the scumbag is the prerequisite to it, and it is the most dangerous of the cult fates. Of the two main factions fighting for control of Aneurism IV, the Controller is the first role for the Cortex, the police force patrolling the city and getting into gunfights with anyone with a limit.
You girls are gonna need a better story than that.
Come on, what?
We have a runner! Freeze!
As a Cortex controller, you can initiate patrols by activating them at terminals, which will then require you to go to another random terminal to get 10% on an amnesite. You can also reset cameras every time they see someone marked for limitation. Lastly, killing people with limits, as indicated by a blue box following their character, will give you a significantly higher reward in amnesites. You can also set these limits yourself on players if you search them and they are carrying contraband. However, keep in mind that although you are decently well off, you can still get quickly murked by most roles, including that Prole who lung punched my fart box after I tagged him. Therefore, it might be a good idea to upgrade to a Limitator, the most powerful of the Cortex fates, or make your way underground and become a rogue. In Aneurism IV, the Malpractitioner for the Scum/Cult faction is one of the more uncommon fates, but can not only become the lifeblood for the cult to survive long term, but is one of the most polarizing and integral fates in the entire game. To play as them, you need to start as a corpsman and convince some cult members to let you into Undertale.
Hi.
You got my job application in the mail, right? From there you can spend 4 amnesites, making it a 7 amnesite job in total to become the Malpractitioner. From there you can heal cult members for amnesites antithetically to the Corpsman, and like other scum, you can break stuff and kill police for amnesites too. You can also poison a large amount of regular consumables, allowing you to roleplay as the average nuisance streamer.
Where is the poison? The battle of wits has begun. Guessed wrong.
You only think I guessed wrong.
However, most importantly, you can craft the festering serum, which when fed to a slave will then transform them into the vomit coffin, the most powerful and dangerous fate in the entire game. In Aneurism IV for the Scum/Cult faction, the most uncommon fate that can be found among them is that of the rogue, which is that of a Cortex controller who has switched hats and joined the rot.
You're one of those heroes, aren't you?
Not anymore.
Why it's so uncommon is you have to make your way underground as a controller and have a Scum member let you in, so you can then purchase the role for an additional 6 amnesites, making it 14 in total, being 1 more expensive than a non-consecrated Zealot. As for why you would go to the trouble, of the 4 Scum roles, the Rogue is the only one that spawns with guns and easy access to the entire Cortex armory, which means infinite bullets combined with the fact that you're an RDM role. You can also betray your other Cortex players out of spite if you don't want to fully waste your 8 amnesite investment instead of going Limitator, but ultimately, even with the infinite ammo, I consider the Zealot to be more dangerous due to its high health and mass replication potential, though due to its infinite gun potential as well, the Rogue is a close second in power level. In Aneurism IV for the Scum/Cult faction, the second most common and the most dangerous fate out of all of them is that of the Zealot. On the surface, the Zealot doesn't seem that much more dangerous than a Scumbag, being a direct upgrade from one costing 10 amnesites, giving it a 13 in total cost.
Oh, so I just toss in here? Pretty straightforward.
However, once a Zealot has been made, they can then consecrate any other role into a Zealot as well, costing 5 human meat per consecration. They're also an RDM and vandalization role, which allows them to accumulate tons of meat and in turn replicate like cockroaches. That's not all either. They have far greater health than average, being less than but comparable to a Limitator, and lastly, they have access to the Cult workbench, allowing them to create explosives and powerful guns like the Tantalizer and Lung Puncher. Combine all this together, you have a high health, potentially high damage RDM role, where if there's one, there's likely more, which altogether makes it the most dangerous Scum fate and the 3rd most powerful fate in the entire game. In Aneurism IV for the Cortex faction, the second and potentially most common role in the Cortex police force is that of the Sanitar, a Liquidator who has been promoted and deputized into a cop-cleaner hybrid. There are 2 ways to become a Sanitar, though both require you to be a Liquidator beforehand, and that is by either being deputized by a high-ranking controller or Limitator, or willingly becoming one yourself for an additional 6 amnesites, giving it a 12 cost in total. From there you are basically a controller and Liquidator in one, able to clean and repair the city and do wartime, but also do patrols and get into gunfights with drug addicts. As a Sanitar, you also have your own special half flamethrower, half machine gun for cleaning and self-defense, as well as access to the Cortex armory. Lastly, since high-ranking Cortex can deputize you from a Liquidator, that during a situation of extreme rot or cult takeover, you might be deputized as one even against your own will in an attempt to conscript you against the rising cult invasion. In Aneurism IV for the Cortex faction, the rarest and most powerful fate on the Cortex side, as well as the most expensive and second most powerful fate in the entire game, is the Limitator, the LMG-wielding executioner with Enclave power armor.
Your ride's over, Mutie. Time to die.
Upgraded from a controller costing 12 amnesites, making it a 20 amnesite cost in total, you can become a Limitator. As a Limitator, you have more than double the health of most fates in the game, and for some, even triple. You also spawn with the strongest machine gun in the game and access to the Cortex armory. You also perform the standard Cortex duties of patrolling, searching for contraband, and slaughtering anyone with a limit. Duties-wise, they are no different than any other Cortex. However, since you are a very powerful and very high-profile target, the fate of an entire server will often be decided on fights with Limitators, as you are essentially the last stand. So basically, if the cult invades and all the Limitators die, your server's f***ed.